Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday, Bayou Blitz family. Depending on what area of the country you are in, happy Frozen Wednesday, Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody stayed safe through the snowstorm or ice storm, depending on what you got and how much you got, and that you're doing your best to stay warm. And we certainly appreciate you letting your Bayou Blitz co-host, me, Bob Rose, him, Brendan Boylan, give us a chance to warm you up this evening. How are you tonight, Brendan?
Good. It was an interesting weekend, obviously for a lot of the country. Thankfully, the Charlotte area did not get hit as bad as we initially thought. Right, a lot of that ended up going to the Tennessee area, so all of our friends in Tennessee, we hope you are well. Charlotte was supposed to get about 3/4 of an inch of ice, and so that was the biggest concern, obviously, sitting on power lines and what that could mean. We ended up not getting a whole lot, just a lot of sleet. But hopefully everybody, like Bob said, is healthy, well, and safe. But other than that, doing okay. Got some interesting social media interactions the last couple days in terms of Saints news. So that'll be the topic point of today. Bob, how cold is it in Pennsylvania? I saw photos, at least from my New Jersey family, of the amount of snow that they got. What's it looking like over in Pittsburgh?
We got 17 inches of snow where I am through Sunday, and then instantly started a deep freeze where Monday, Tuesday, and today we have been in the negative degrees, double-digit negative wind chills. So basically, once we got that snow, everything started to instantly freeze. Fortunately, knock on wood, power's held out. Our health is held out. I did not have to go to my other job on Monday. Did so today and yesterday. The roads still aren't great because where they didn't plow completely, or where people shoveled or used snow blowers to clear out their cars and blew it back across the road, like I said, it instantly froze. So there's some interesting interesting driving areas. Some lanes of the highway, you only have about, on the 4 lanes, you only had about a lane and a half where it's cleared or less. Such is life in Western Pennsylvania, I suppose. We don't get that much snow very often, but the road crews did the best they could as it was coming down on Sunday. So I'll give them kudos for that. I'll put it this way. It's a hell of a lot colder here than it is in the Bahamas right now. Thank you. I figured you opened the door for me, so I would just storm right through it. I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to my Bahamas trip in late March. That Bahamas trip is going to be a part of the Get Checked or Check Out Foundation's annual Go Black and Gold Celebrity Charity Fan Cruise. This year's cruise is going to start on Thursday, March 26th, and ending Monday, March 30th. This year, we are sailing out of Jacksonville, Florida, not New Orleans like has typically been in the past. However, if you are booking and coming from the New Orleans or Gulf Coast region, there are packages available, group packages available, where you all are going to travel together into Jacksonville, or you could just do like my family and I are doing and fly into Jacksonville. The even more exciting part is the last few years, the cruise has gone to Cozumel, Mexico, and we had a blast there last year. This year, we are getting ready for our first trip together to the tropical Bahamas. And you also get to join Saints legends, Delvin Breaux, Tyrone Hughes, Michael Lewis, Courtney Roby. We're trying to get others, but these 4 gentlemen and their families are already confirmed. They are an annual part of this cruise, and believe me, if you have not gone, just to hang out with these guys and their families and other Saints fans. It's a tremendous experience, and we hang out together for a fun-filled getaway, and we do so with a purpose. The Get Checked or Check Out Foundation, their website tcynow.org. They are a foundation co-founded by Shireen and set in place to help guide people and their families through difficult medical times in their lives. They'll help steer you in the right direction when it comes to treatment options, therapy options, research options. So like I said, check out their website, see what they're all about, donate a little bit. But the best way to help this foundation is treat yourself to a vacation with Delvin, Tyrone, Mike, Courtney, myself, and other Black and Gold family members. Because all these tickets, all these cabins benefit this wonderful charity. Get Checked or Check Out helped out over 2,500 cases in 2025. We're looking to significantly increase that number this year, but for them to do it, they need your help. We need your help. And during this cruise, we have our own section of the boat. We're eating meals together. We have our own dinner cabins. We have our own party rooms, for lack of a better term. As we get together for game nights, trivia, Q&A sessions with the Saints players that I mentioned, and we're partying the days and nights away, all doing it for a cause. There's going to be a cocktail contest on the beach, a very intense and fun putt-putt golf tournament, along with beach Olympic events, all captained by Delvin, Ty, Michael, and Courtney. It is a tremendous time. And remember, all these tickets need or help raise the much needed funds. It's part of the Get Checked or Check Out mission. And again, the cruise is Thursday, March 26th through Monday, March 30th. It is not too late to book, so please do so now. You can contact Summer through Seven Seas Travel at 985-788-6584. When you do contact Summer to book, make sure you mention us. Make sure you mention the Bayou Blitz. She'll know how to take care of you from there. You can also contact Shireen for any more details about this cruise, about her, about Get Checked or Check Out. Shireen's number is 504-305-7563. Listen, there's going to be theme nights, karaoke nights, the other contests and parties that I mentioned. So please treat yourself, your family, to a wonderful getaway. Benefit a terrific charity while doing it. If you have never done so, I promise you, once you do, you will make it a part of your yearly family activities. That's a guarantee. And I mentioned Summer, I mentioned Shireen. Feel free to reach out to me too if you have any questions about the trip, about the cause, about the site. If you want to hear about some of my experiences, we're going to have the Saints players that I mentioned, all of them good friends of Brendan and myself. We're going to have them back on our show in the coming weeks to talk a little bit more about the cause, talk a little bit more about the cruise. But don't wait for them. Make that booking today. There are still cabins left, and please do so as quickly as possible.
Well said, Mr. Rose. My lights are starting to flicker in here. Should I be scared? Especially with everything we just talked about weather-wise? I don't know. I see John Butler in the chat. John, thanks for tuning in, as you always do. I'm going to reach out and message you about something, just a random thought. I meant to do that earlier today. So be on the lookout for that. John, we'd also like your thoughts, John. I think it would be great to get your thoughts on kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. So definitely shoot that our way as well. I had mentioned it was an interesting couple days on Saints social media.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll start at the beginning. That's a good place to start. And that was a tweet that was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Kay Adams, who a lot of you know from her time with the NFL Network, and now she has her own show, and has always done a fantastic job covering the New Orleans Saints, dating back to the Sean Payton days. I always
One of the few nationals that actually do a decent job at covering the Saints, by the way.
Definitely had a grasp on what was going on in New Orleans, was definitely a viable source of information. Well, she tweets out that she had gotten word that Demario Davis was open to testing free agency, testing the market. And that was an odd one to read. Not because it wasn't something that we may have seen coming or may have expected, but it was the first time it had really been publicly put out there that, hey, he may be looking to move on, or at least seeing what his options are. And it hurt a little bit. And you and I have talked about this, is especially when you go through a rebuild or a retool or whatever the hell you want to call it, you're going to lose players that either are fan favorites or guys that have been a part of the organization for so long that you can't see them in any other uniform.
Yeah.
And I think that if I had to put money on it going back to the beginning of the season, because the conversation obviously was surrounded around Demario Davis, Cameron Jordan, is this, going into this season, was it going to be their last year in New Orleans, this, that, and the other? I would have put money that the more likely to leave was Demario. I felt like Cam was going to be a Saint for life, especially because of how vocal he has been about that and wanting that. Now, this doesn't mean that Demario's gone out the door.
Right.
It just means, hey, I'm going to assess my options. And at his age, and not that he played poorly, but I think that this year, when watching back film, you could definitely see a half a step slower here, half a step slower there. I think it's logical for any player who's 36 years old, starting to feel the effects of playing as long as he has in the NFL, to go, you know what? Do I want to put myself in a position to maybe take a lesser role and go chase a championship? I can't blame him for that. But again, it was the first time that we'd really seen it put out there. And it kind of sucked. Kind of went, oh man, like these aren't like going back to the regular season when Rashid Shaheed got traded, and not quite the same tenure in New Orleans, but certainly becoming a fan favorite. It's a little easier to deal with it when it's just, oh, they got traded.
Mm-hmm.
And it's quick, and you kind of have to move on to the next thing. But man, when it's a free agent, it stings a little bit more. Do you tend to agree with that? I mean, we've been covering the team for the same amount of years now.
Yeah. It's definitely a cold slap of reality. Which in reality usually does suck. Alan Ulrich and I broached this topic a bit on his show Under the Dome last night. Great show. If you folks haven't checked it out, a lot of you are crossover fans between the two shows. But if you haven't,
hand in hand.
Yeah, pretty much. We're kind of their little brother. But check out Alan's show. It's on it's called Under the Dome. Typically goes live Tuesday nights. Can be found same places we can be on all social media platforms and YouTube as well. But we broached the subject a little bit, and I took the approach of, I think it made Demario's comments, Kay's report, made more waves because we don't expect to hear that kind of thing out of Demario Davis. We expect to hear it out of Cam, and we have. Hey, I'd like to stay in New Orleans, but I'm not going to play for free. I still want to take care of my family. I still expect to be paid at market value, things like that. Contract posturing. And, Cam has always done a pretty nice job at subtly doing that. And at least I'm hoping that Demario and his people are kind of doing the same here. Does that rule out the possibility of either Cam or Davis leaving? No. Of course not. I think they both proved this past year that even after 14, 15 years in the league, these guys can still play at a high level. Maybe not the elite players they once were, but certainly close enough where they can make a significant contribution to any defense that they're a part of. But I mean, man, it's hard to picture either Demario Davis or Cam Jordan in a different uniform other than the New Orleans Saints. And I know Demario started his career as a New York Jet, played a year or two for Cleveland, came back to the Jets before he played for the Saints. But and Cam is a Saint lifer. But we hope. And I think even if he does leave, Cam, that is, at this point, you have to put him in the same category as a Ricky Jackson. Comes to mind. Ricky finished his career as a San Francisco 49er. Sam Mills finished his career as a Carolina Panther. But those guys will always be New Orleans Saints. Ricky has said it several times himself. I put Cam in that category. Demario and his wife are extremely active, just as active as Cam and his family in different functions, charitable and otherwise, in the New Orleans region, Gulf Coast area. So I mean, I expect Demario, once his career is all finished up, I expect Demario to continue to have ties here too. But you certainly hope, for nostalgia's sake, for emotion's sake, that the team, Demario, the team, and Cam can come to some kind of terms where these guys can finish their playing career as Saints. And like I said, they both showed very clearly that they still have a lot of football left in them, and that they could be significant contributors, each of them, to Brandon Staley's defense. And when you're analyzing what's going on the football field, I think that's more important. If you manage to set emotions aside, and these guys know, probably more so than us fans or us in the media, that this is a business first and foremost. And their playing careers are far closer to the end than they are the beginning. So hey, it's nice to make a little bit of money out the door too. Maybe you give yourself a chance to win a championship. Now I think the Saints are going to be a vastly improved team next year. But if Demario, if Cam feel like that they could get comparable money elsewhere, with maybe someone that they view as an instant contender, maybe they make that jump. You certainly hope not. You love things to work out here. And at the end of the day, I do believe, and this might be my heart talking more than my head, I do believe that we will see Davis and Jordan remain with the Saints for 2026.
And I think that poses another thing, right? You're talking about speaking with your heart rather than your head. I actually think the logical thing is for both of them to come back. Sticking with Demario Davis, and we've talked about this for the last probably 2 or 3 years, there isn't really like an heir apparent there. I don't think there's anyone on this roster today that you feel comfortable stepping up and being in that spot. Right. And we've talked about that being an issue. And we haven't said, oh, go spend a first round pick, but go try to find somebody that you feel comfortable with. And some of you are going to be on the other side of the screen saying, what about Danny Stutzman? Danny Stutzman is the Pete Warner replacement. We've kind of spoke about that just in playing styles and the things that he does well. Neither of those guys are great in coverage. And that's one thing that has always separated Demario Davis from a lot of linebackers in the league, is that he is pretty good in coverage. He's one of the best blitzers from the linebacker position in the league. And obviously we've talked about his intelligence and his football IQ ad nauseum over the years that he's been in New Orleans. I guess to kind of turn the page to Cameron Jordan a little bit before we jump into Alontae Taylor. Cam's an interesting one. I think it's a little more interesting now considering the season that he had this past year. And hear me out. I think a lot of that has to do with if he had came out and he had a year where he struggled statistically again, I think it would have been less attractive for other teams to throw money at him,
Mhm.
bring him in on a 1-year deal.
Or even the Saints to bring him back.
Right. At the end of the day, it's still a business, and you still need to get production out of guys. And came out a double-digit sack season, which I think warmed everybody's heart a little bit. It helps that the Saints were playing really good football over the last back half of the season, but to also see Cam show some signs of life and show signs that he is still a top-tier competitor and a guy who has a tremendous motor and a tremendous engine to make plays. Well, because of that, we're not the only people that saw that. The rest of the league is going to be able to see that and say, well, how would you guys feel about maybe throwing a 1-year, $10 million contract at Cameron Jordan? And I'm talking about competitors. I'm talking about guys and teams that are going to be competing. And this is going to suck to say for the next, I don't know, however many years, probably 5 years is going to be my guess. But anytime a Saint hits free agency and we talk about, oh, this guy could go to a contending team. The first team that's going to be out of everybody's damn mouth, it's going to be the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
Because of the connection with Sean Payton. And guess what? For both the guys we've already mentioned, I could definitely see it. I could definitely see them be like, you know what? Let's go compete. Let's go play for Sean again.
Mm-hmm.
And that one's going to hurt. I saw, John, you threw in the comments, as long as it's not Atlanta. For me, yes, as long as it's not Atlanta, but also as long as it's not Denver. Because the more that I see, Bob, I thought about, you want to talk about PTSD from us writing together all these years. You know what PTSD I had watching that Broncos game?
Oh, God, yeah.
If the Broncos win, the amount of, well, first off, the amount of articles you'd have to write would be tremendous for you. But, man, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, my God. You see little Jordan Humphrey make a catch. Oh, my God, little Jordan Humphrey. And you're sitting there and your brain's just doing all these things. I was like, man, I don't know what I would have done if I had to write about all these former Saints playing in the Super Bowl. Because that team's just loaded with them, right? Mm-hmm. Adam Troutman, Adam Prentice, little Jordan Humphrey. Obviously, Sean Payton's the head coach, and it just goes down the line and down the line. I don't think I could have done it. But I digress. I could see those guys going that route. Or the other route would be, Chicago had a much better year than people thought they would. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about defense specifically on today's episode. Well, Dennis Allen's there as the defensive coordinator. Now, Dennis Allen's lack of success as a head coach, and we've talked about this, and I'll credit both of us for saying this, mostly Bob, but I'll credit myself as well, is, yeah, his tenure as the head coach was awful, but that doesn't eliminate the decade of excellence you saw from Saints defenses while he was the defensive coordinator. And that does not excuse the relationship that he probably has with a guy like DeMario Davis, who was running his defense for that many years. And it doesn't excuse the relationship he probably has with Cameron Jordan as a guy who was his number one pass rusher all of those years. All of those things are in play.
You know,
I still think Cam stays.
I don't think Cam goes to Chicago. Because while I agree with everything that you said about DA and DeMario, DA and Cam, remember Cam threatened to, Cam was ready to come out and publicly demand a trade the week before Dennis Allen was fired last year, because that's how bad things had gotten in New Orleans. DeMario, usually very accessible to the media post game. I'm not going to say he stopped talking, but he was much more guarded before Dennis Allen was let go. So while there certainly was a relationship there, I question how strong that still is. Sure. Sean Payton makes sense. Yeah, a lot of sense. And Cam openly talks about how much love he has for Sean. Uh, so yeah, could be a realistic destination for either of them. Yeah, and you look at Mike Vrabel is a defensive coach in New England. I think DeMario would love to play for Vrabel's type of defense. Yeah, I think that there will be at least a handful of legitimate suitors for either Cam Jordan or Demario Davis. So if the Saints have any interest in keeping both, I think that they should make a contract move sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and as well as I do, a lot of these things end up getting talked through. I don't want to say behind the scenes, but kind of quietly during this time. Some numbers get thrown at each other. Agents have a lot of fun in disguising things, having things leak to the media about, oh, well, my client would be open to, right? A lot of things like that are happening as well. Let's finish with Alontae Taylor, who was the other person that was subject to some social media. Alontae Taylor shared on his Instagram story. It looked like an article about some of the top free agents, with a caption from somebody else saying that you're gonna have to pay Alontae because he's not a number 2 corner, like he's number 1. Well, that's interesting because in New Orleans, he's not going to be the number 1 corner. And frankly, I think situations like this are always interesting because it tells me a lot about a player, and especially a young player. Because the role that Alontae Taylor has found and carved out in New Orleans seems to fit Alontae Taylor's play style. It seems to fit New Orleans' style of defense, and having a guy who gets to be a little bit of like a gadget guy or a joker guy on the defensive side, right? And New Orleans has always had this hybrid type of like safety corner. What are they, right? You go back in recent memory and you look at a guy like CJ Gardner-Johnson. You go back a little bit further, and I think Malcolm Jenkins is like the prime example, a guy who was a corner in college that eventually made the transition to safety. Roman Harper was definitely a safety, but was moved around a lot. And you could go through. Raphael Bush was a guy that got moved around a lot.
Von
Bell, who got paid handsomely after that role. I thought you'd be a little bit more impressed with my pull of Raphael Bush.
I like that. I do.
I loved Raphael Bush. Just a really aggressive, hard-hitting safety. But the Saints have had a history of it. They find a guy that they really like. Remember, Howden was a guy when he was drafted that kind of fit that mold as well, right? Well, Alontae Taylor is clearly the guy for that role. Well, if he feels like, oh, no, I want to be a number 1 corner and I'm going to hit the market, I'm going to demand this type of money, it tells me, not negatively by any means, but it does tell me a lot of where he is as a young football player. To where if he were to come back and say, you know what, I can play the role that I have and maybe take a little bit less money and be really damn good in this hybrid safety role and, be able to blitz from different spots, pick up some sacks, and just be kind of be like a game changer in some senses, but on a little bit less money because I found a role that I really like. I found an organization and a defense that I like. That's just 2 completely different ways of thinking. And I don't want to go as far as saying one way is more mature thinking than the other, but one is definitely more team oriented than the other.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be interesting to see what happens. I brought up CJ Gardner-Johnson already. And that's a prime example of looking after the team versus looking after me.
Yeah.
And it'll be, I'm not comparing Alontae Taylor to that at all, but for the sake of comparison, it is going to be interesting to see which route he decides to take, of how much importance is in being the number one guy.
Yeah, and coming into the season, what you and I typically do are talk about. We usually talk about, typically during preseason, when we're sort of reaching for content anyway, we typically talk about the players who are playing out the final year of their contract. And we highlighted Alontae Taylor as one of, if not the biggest key pending free agent.
Yeah.
And I said at that time that the Saints would be wise to sign Alontae Taylor if they could get something done during the season, certainly before he hits the market. Because I think if he hits the market, I think he's going to price himself out of New Orleans. And now we hear him hinting, or his people hinting at, like you said, wants to be paid as a number one corner. And while we know from covering the Saints, covering Alontae Taylor, and you and I are both big fans of him, he's actually played the role of a number one corner as a rookie. When Paulson Adebo went down for a while and Marshawn Lattimore went down for a good part of the year, it was Alontae Taylor by default. And he played okay. But like you just said, Brendan, Alontae he does okay as a number one, number two corner. But he has some coverage limitations. He's going to get a lot of flags. That's just his style of play. Alontae Taylor flourishes when he's used as a hybrid, as a guy that can blitz off the slot. He's capable of moving outside sometimes, capable of playing off-ball coverage, capable of playing in a two-deep safety formation. He has a lot of versatility that he brings to a defense. One of the reasons why I love him. We just talked about that. You want to talk about a fit for Dennis Allen's defense? Alontae Taylor would be a fit for Dennis Allen's defense. And a Dennis Allen defense who, by the way, has Jaquan Brisker, Jalen Jones, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson all hitting free agency. So maybe the Bears only sign one or two of those guys and bring in an Alontae Taylor. Man, I would love to see Jaquan Brisker. And I talked about this a couple years ago when he was in the draft. Matter of fact, the story is, some stories leaked out that the Saints were allegedly ready to draft Brisker that year before the Bears snatched him a couple picks ahead of their choice. And then the Saints went to their plan, quote unquote, plan B was Alontae Taylor. Worked out pretty well. And I mentioned Brisker, Jones, and Gardner-Johnson specifically because their position title is that of safety. And I have a feeling that that's what Alontae Taylor could end up being if he goes to another team in free agency. Now, again, whether safety, cornerback, Alontae is what he is. He's a hybrid guy. If you're going to term him, call him a safety, that's fine. But he's going to be your slot guy. If you're going to call him a corner, fine. But a multiple receiver sets, which most NFL teams run now, almost as a base formation, Alontae is going to be your slot guy. I say this with all the love in the world for Alontae and all the desire in the world for him to be back in New Orleans, for any team that pays him and slots him as their number one corner, buyer beware. Because, again, we know the coverage limitations that Taylor has. And if you bring him in with the idea, you could pay him as a number one corner, pay him however you want. But if you bring him in with the idea that he's going to be the number one cover corner for your defense, I think that's something that in a year or two, throughout the league. Alontae Taylor could be called a free agent bust, and we talk about him every single year. Yeah, man, I can't believe this team signed this guy to this contract to do that, and it blew up in everybody's faces. That could be Alontae Taylor if this, depending on the situation, the way it works out. I would love to see the Saints get a deal done with Taylor before he hits free agency. I wouldn't even be opposed to a franchise tag to keep him from hitting the open market while you negotiate a longer term deal. Mickey Loomis doesn't like to do business that way, and I can't see it happening with Taylor. But when you look at the list of free agents that the Saints have, we mentioned Davis, we mentioned Cam, but at least with those guys, there is loyalty to the organization. So I'm getting the feeling that behind closed doors, they're saying, okay, if I test the open market, I'd be willing to come back to you with the offer to see if you'll match it or better it. That kind of thing won't happen with Alontae. So if you're going to franchise tag or even a transition tag any of those three players, it's got to be Alontae, and there's nobody else. And we're going to talk about some lower tiered Saints free agents in a minute, I know, on defense. There's nobody else on this list of Saints free agents, offense or defense, that's worth even discussing a franchise tag or transition. Alontae, I could see the reasoning.
Yes. And you may know this off the top of your head, but you just said Mickey Loomis doesn't like doing business that way. When's the last time the Saints used the franchise tag?
They, it's been recent, but it escapes me.
Because the only, and maybe this is me just forgetting, but the only other time I really remember it coming up was some of the Drew Brees years, and then Jimmy Graham.
Mm-hmm. And then for years, nothing. It wasn't even discussed. Right. Did they use it on Von Bell for a year? No, Marcus Williams.
Marcus Williams
was the last one they used it on. I knew it was a defensive back. It just escaped me. Yeah, it was Marcus Williams. I forget the year, but it was Marcus Williams.
That makes sense. Well, let's talk about some of the other Saints free agents. Obviously, like you said, I mean, these aren't guys that are going to make or break your team necessarily in terms of star power, but some guys that have been useful pieces to the puzzle, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the first guy you want to talk about?
Well, I'll throw them out in a bunch because I think they're worth talking about in a bunch. Jonah Williams, Chris Rumpf, Jonathan Bullard, and the defensive tackle John Ridgeway.
Yeah, Ridgeway, I think. I don't want to call him a placeholder guy, but that trade made a lot of sense when it did, just because he fit the system a lot better. The Saints need to address that position regardless.
Yes, big time.
Rump's an interesting one because he had some flashes.
He did.
He had some flashes, and I think he did enough to warrant you going, do we want to bring him back as a rotational defensive and edge rusher type of guy? Obviously, he had some plays on special teams as well. That's interesting to me. But I think Rump's the only one that I'm going, yeah, you know what? Like, I would try to work something out on a 1 or 2 year deal to bring him back. Bullard, perhaps. Ridgeway, I'm okay letting walk, depending on what you do at that position. Right? If you just want a guy that's going to be there, that knows the system, can compete in training camp, then sure, it makes sense. But I never thought he was going to be a mainstay of that rotation anyway. No,
and none of these guys are. Bullard had some nice run stops. Jonah Williams had a couple pass tips and a couple nice pressures or pass breakups. And like you said, the interior especially, this team needs a big-bodied run stuffer. on the edge where Jonah Williams and especially Rumpf, they're all rotational guys. And that's neither a good or bad thing. Rotational guys can be replaced, but if you let your rotational guys walk out the building because you're like, we can get more rotational guys, they better be able to give the production that these guys did. And these guys were a big and underrated, but a big underlying part of the reason why the Saints had a top 10 defense and vast improvements against the run, ranked number 4 against the pass. Are any of them even close to Pro Bowl performers? No. I mean, they're not even long-term starters. But again, if you're going in with the attitude of these guys are rotational pieces, I could replace that. Okay, and you're right, but you better be able to replace them. And we have the rookie 3rd round pick from last year, Vernon Brockton. Got hurt very early in the season, may not even made it out of training camp. I don't remember. Maybe he's one of those guys. We hope that the Saints realize the major need that we've been calling for is big-bodied run stuffer. We believe that whether Cam comes back or not, that they're going to address the edge rusher spot probably in the draft, to complement Chase Young and bring the best out of him. So none of that doesn't change whether you bring Williams, Rumpf, Bullard, Ridgeway. You could bring all of them back. You could bring none of them back. That doesn't change what we just said. You still need that big-bodied run stuffer. You still need a bona fide edge rusher, starting caliber, game-changing edge rusher. But if you let all these guys walk, you got to replace them. So, do you replace them with mid-tier free agents and expecting that a mid or late round draft choice could step up? Maybe you do that, because none of these guys are going to break your salary cap, whether you keep them or lose them. So I think it's going to be very interesting what happens with those guys. Usually, what happens with the Saints is, there's 4 of them. They bring maybe 2 of them back, and look to the draft, look to late for a week or 2 into free agency. You hear, the Saints signed, and I'm spitballing a name here. Tier Tart, the defensive tackle currently for the Chargers, who's played for Brandon Staley, by the way. Hint, hint. So yeah, I mean, those kind of guys are interchangeable, but not irreplaceable.
I'm glad you said it that way. I'm also glad you brought up a guy who had played for Staley before, because I definitely see this being a free agency period where a lot of your rotational guys end up getting swapped out for guys that have played for Staley or played before, because this will be the first full off season, top to bottom, with Kellen Moore and Staley and having full control of free agency, the draft, all of that. So I definitely see, if season 1's about putting your thumbprints on things, season 2 is definitely about infusing your DNA. And I think some of infusing your DNA is bringing in players that you're comfortable and familiar with. And so I do see a little bit more of that happening this offseason from both sides of the ball. But since we're talking about defense tonight, I definitely expect some Staley, some guys who've played for Staley to end up on this roster, or guys that have played in similar systems, or guys who've played with particular assistants, that type of ordeal. And I'm not talking about the big name guys, but specifically the rotational guys that have been there, that can soak up the system pretty quick because they know it, that type of thing. I'll throw this out here early, given I don't know the contract that he signed. I still want Denzel Perryman. I still do. That'll always be one that from being my draft day crush, he's now being a guy who's played for Staley, I still want him in New Orleans. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know what kind of contract he has. I don't know if he's going to be a pending free agent or not. But man, like guys like that, I would love to come down to New Orleans.
And listen, I've always loved Denzel Perryman too. You know that. But I mean, if you bring back Demario Davis, then you don't need to bring in a guy like Perryman. However,
Right.
if you lose Davis, I think if you lose Demario Davis, you lose an integral part of your defense. Emotional, physical, and intellectual. And that's why I said all along, even as Cam was putting out another terrific season, I have never wavered from the stance that, from a football aspect, that bringing back, if you could only bring back one of them, Davis has to be the one you bring back over Cam. Because if you lose Davis, all of a sudden, and you already said it, is Pete Werner going to step up? No. Is Danny Stutzman? I mean, maybe as the defensive play caller, yeah. But I mean, athletically, as the centerpiece for your defense, probably not. I would certainly much rather a pairing of Stutzman and Davis in the middle than I would Stutzman and Werner. But if you lose a Demario Davis, now all of a sudden, the Saints picking at 8th overall, a Sonny Styles from Ohio State is now legitimately in the conversation. Throwing money at a Quay Walker from the Packers, or especially Quincy Williams from the Jets, legitimately in the conversation. So basically what I'm saying is, re-signing Demario, or not re-signing Demario Davis, creates another big need at the top of your need list. And we know running back, we know wide receiver, we certainly know offensive guard. We already mentioned interior defensive line. You add off-ball linebacker high up on that list if you lose Davis. You just do.
And that goes back to what I said. Is for the last 2 or 3 years, we've talked about who's the next guy, who's the next guy, who's the next guy. And now here's an opportunity, where if the Saints aren't able to bring him back, it's really going to bite you in the ass that you haven't addressed the position at all. Now, there's a couple guys that, we really like on this roster. We like the potential of, but I use that phrase a lot when it came to Spencer Rattler. I love the potential of. Jalen Ford's still a guy that I think could be a player.
Yeah.
Stallberg could be a player, but I don't know that but let's be honest with ourselves. I don't trust either of those guys to fill those shoes right now.
No. And Isaiah, I watch Isaiah a lot. I'm a big fan, as most of you who follow my work or watch the show know. But I'm also a realist. Isaiah is my passing situation guy. You want to throw a spread offense with me, at me. I'm going to sit Pete Werner. I'm probably even going to sit Danny Stutzman, and I'm putting Isaiah Stallberg in the game. But for base, for goal line, for short yardage, Isaiah hasn't. I'm not saying he can't do it. He hasn't proven that he can. Same with Jalen Ford. Danny Stutzman could flourish in that role, and like I said, he could be a good base situational linebacker. Stay on the field on most downs, but you don't want a pairing of Stutzman and Werner. It's too the two of them combined, too athletically limited in space in particular, and you will just be victimized by quick, fast offenses, especially ones that like to attack the intermediate areas of your defense. And that's something that Demario just flourished at over the years.
And, more and more, the NFL is going to speed. And we see it more and more every year. you throw those two guys out there that are very similar in a lot of ways to what you alluded to. Put a guy like, I don't know, Tajay Spears would have a field day, right? Any kind of scat backy type of team is going to have an absolute field day. Or not big tight ends, but fast tight ends. And we're seeing more and more of that hybrid tight end role. It used to be very few and far between, right? You think your Jimmy Grahams and your Gronks. Might be a sore subject all these years later, but even like the Aaron Hernandezes of the world, like guys like that were just super athletic for that position. We're seeing more and more of those guys left and right as well, where it's not just this anomaly to have a tight end that can run a 4.5 or a 4.6.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good place to kind of put a pin in it. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of the offseason to talk about things like this. Next week, we'll talk about just pending free agents on the offensive side of the ball. The defense was really good. And it was kind of nice to only have to highlight like these three guys, and two of them respectfully being older, kind of aging out, if you will. But man, offensively, it's going to be a real head scratcher what they do with a lot of things. I mean,
burn it down.
What was that?
Burn it down. Let them all walk.
Let them all walk, except for Chris Olave. But please don't overpay.
But yeah, Chris isn't a free agent either. So
no, he's not. But that's something we'll have to talk about too when you talk about what you do in free agency this year. But anyway, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. Bob, I always tip my hat to you, a guy who is continuously putting out content, and putting out content, and putting out content.
Not much in January, man.
Well, I mean, it's a slower part of the year, but you're still doing it. You're still doing it more than a handful of other people, especially in the New Orleans Saints media. So, for the weirdos out there that don't already follow you and your work, where can people find you and your work?
Well, thank you for the pats on the back, Brendan. And, folks, you can follow my work over at the Saints Wire. That's a USA Today publication. It can certainly be found on usatoday.com, but it's its own entity too. Saints Wire could be found on the general internet, certainly all social media platforms. And as I always do and always will, as long as someone will have me, I post my articles on my personal social media pages, which is Bob Rose on Facebook, at BobbyR2613. I know everybody wants to talk about, and I'll jump in on some of it too, the Senior Bowl and things like that. I like to talk about and cover free agency first. Yes, I am watching. I've already have extended draft prospects. I will certainly be expanding that. But I like to hit free agency first, sprinkle the draft in, and then increase my draft coverage as I go. That's probably going to be my strategy this year as well, along with a Saints player year in review, player by player year in review pieces. Those are quick pieces. Especially we're talking about free agency this week and next week here on the show. I like to hit those guys first. Hey, what were their importance to the Saints in 2025? What could be their importance in 2026, etc. So some of the these are some of the angles that I'm going to be covering coming up. And don't forget to book that cabin for the Get Checked or Check Out Black and Gold Celebrity Charity Fan Cruise. Join Delvin Bro, Michael Lewis, Courtney Roby, Tyrone Hughes, me, all of our families. Join us Thursday, March 26th through Monday, March 30th. We're going to the Bahamas, folks. It doesn't get any better than that. But you get to go to the Bahamas while hanging out with Black and Gold family. We're taking over the ship. You're benefiting a great cause. tcynow.org. Check it out. Book that cabin. If you didn't get the numbers to book it at the beginning, email me, text me, whatever you need to do. I want to see more new people on that cruise. Can't wait to see the same faces, but I want to see a ton of new people.
there you have it. And like Bob said, we'll be having some of those folks on the show here. I guess in the coming weeks. We don't have that much time before the cruise.
No, we really don't.
But we'll be having those guys on to chat with us, and I know that we'll all have a good time with that. For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. Bob and I will be back next week. Next week, we're talking about offensive free agents, and trust me, a lot of those free agents in that discussion will be offensive. With that, I hope you guys have a great night. And until next week, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Bayou Blitz. See you later.